The grand hall of the Regency Palace was draped in white lilies and golden silk, a sight that left even the most stoic guests breathless. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, throwing warm light across the velvet carpet that led to the altar. Music swelled gently as whispers rippled through the crowd, everyone waiting for the moment when the bride would appear. Armin adjusted the collar of his black tuxedo and drew in a shaky breath. He was the groom, a man of 26, with sharp features and an air of confidence that had earned him respect among his friends. Yet beneath his calm exterior, his heart pounded like a drum. Today wasn't just any day. Today was the beginning of his new life with Aisha, the woman he believed destiny had chosen for him. When the doors at the back of the hall opened, all heads turned. There she was, the bride. Aisha stepped forward in a shimmering white gown embroidered with silver thread, her veil cascading down like a river of mist. Her hands clutched a bouquet of roses, and her slow, graceful steps echoed in the silence. The audience sighed in admiration, and Armin felt his chest tighten at the sight of her. She was beautiful, ethereal, even, but something about her seemed different. Armin squinted slightly. Her smile was there, soft and delicate, but her eyes seemed distant, glassy, as if she were looking through him rather than at him. A fleeting shiver ran down his spine. Still, he pushed the thought away. It was nerves, he told himself. Weddings were emotional, overwhelming. Of course, people looked different under stress. Aisha reached the altar, and the ceremony began. The officiant spoke the traditional words, his voice solemn yet warm. Guests leaned forward, eager to witness the sacred vows. But as the ceremony unfolded, Armin couldn't shake off the unease gnawing at him. Aisha's hands trembled slightly as she held the bouquet, her lips quivering every now and then as if she wanted to speak but couldn't. More than that, her gaze kept flicking, not at him, not at the officiant, but toward a shadowed corner of the hall. It was then that Armin noticed something unusual. Her wrist. As she shifted her bouquet slightly, the lace sleeve of her gown slid back just enough to reveal faint marks. Thin, reddish lines, barely visible but undeniably there. His eyes widened. They looked like fresh cuts, carefully hidden beneath makeup and lace. Armin's breath caught. Was he imagining it, or had his bride-to-be been hurt? The officiant's voice thundered through the hall. Do you, Armin, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? Armin nodded, his mind spinning. I do. Then it was her turn. And do you, Aisha, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? A hush fell across the room. Aisha opened her mouth to answer, but no sound came out. Her lips trembled, her eyes darted once again toward that shadowed corner. For a brief moment, Armin followed her gaze and saw nothing unusual, just a cluster of guests whispering. Yet when he looked back at her face, he saw something that chilled his blood. A single tear had slipped down her cheek, smudging the makeup ever so slightly. Aisha, he whispered, too softly for the crowd to hear. She shook her head almost imperceptibly. The officiant repeated the question, his tone firm. And that's when it happened. Instead of answering, Aisha's hand slipped from his grip. The bouquet fell to the floor, scattering roses across the altar. The room gasped collectively. Armin's instinct screamed at him, something was terribly wrong. Without thinking, he stepped back, raising his hand toward the officiant. Stop, Armin said loudly, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. The hall erupted in murmurs. The guests turned their heads in confusion. The officiant blinked in shock. Armin looked directly at Aisha, his chest heaving. This can't go on. Something's wrong with her. The bride froze, her face paling under the veil. Her father rose from his seat, anger flashing in his eyes. What nonsense is this, Armin? You're humiliating us in front of everyone. But Armin stood his ground. His mind replayed the details, the glassy eyes, the trembling hands, the hidden marks on her wrist, the silent tear. He didn't care about embarrassment, not anymore. No, he said firmly. I can't marry her until I know the truth. The hall fell silent again, the kind of silence that holds its breath, waiting for the next word, the next move. Aisha's lips parted, her voice finally emerging, cracked and fragile. Armin, please. Her plea wasn't for him to continue the ceremony, it was for something else. For help. And in that moment, Armin knew, stopping the wedding had been the only choice. The wedding hall had turned from a place of celebration into a chamber of whispers and tension. Guests murmured in shock, some leaning forward to see better, others exchanging incredulous looks. The bride's bouquet still lay scattered across the polished floor, red petals crushed under the weight of the moment. Armin's heart pounded so loudly he thought everyone could hear it. He had just stopped his own wedding, something unthinkable, but he couldn't ignore the fear in Aisha's eyes. Aisha, he said again, softer this time, tell me what's wrong. Her lips trembled. She clutched her lace sleeves tightly as though afraid the world would see what lay beneath. Her father stormed down the aisle, face flushed with rage. This is outrageous, he bellowed. Armin, if you don't want this marriage, say so like a man. But do not humiliate my daughter with your baseless accusations. Armin turned, meeting his eyes. I'm not humiliating her. I'm trying to protect her. Can't you see? She doesn't want this. Gasps rippled through the guests. Some nodded discreetly, as if they, too, had noticed the bride's hesitation. The officiant, caught between duty and chaos, raised his hand. Everyone, please calm down. We need to hear from the bride. All eyes shifted to Aisha. She looked like a trapped bird, her chest rising and falling quickly, her gaze flicking toward that same shadowed corner. For a moment, Armin thought she would remain silent. But then, with trembling fingers, she lifted her veil. The hall collectively exhaled. Beneath the veil, her eyes glistened with unshed tears, her cheeks streaked where makeup had run. She looked younger, more fragile, stripped of the confidence everyone had assumed she had. Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard. I can't do this. The words detonated like thunder. The guests erupted, some gasping, some whispering furiously. What do you mean, you can't? Her father demanded, his voice laced with fury and disbelief. Aisha's shoulders quaked. Because this marriage isn't mine. It's not my choice. Armin froze. The world seemed to tilt under his feet. What? He asked gently. She looked at him then, directly into his eyes, as though searching for strength. I was forced into this. I didn't want to marry anyone. Not yet. The silence that followed was deafening. Armin's stomach twisted. Forced. The marks on her wrist flashed in his mind. The tears. The glassy eyes. It all made sense now. Her mother rose shakily from her chair, voice quivering. Aisha, no, don't say such things. But Aisha didn't stop. The dam had broken, and her words poured out, trembling but unstoppable. I wanted to finish my studies. I wanted to make choices for myself. But, her eyes darted again toward the corner of the hall. Armin followed her gaze and noticed a man sitting there, broad-shouldered, with a cold, stern face. He wasn't a relative Armin recognized, but the way Aisha flinched every time her eyes met his told him enough. That man, Armin whispered. Aisha's lips tightened. She nodded faintly. Armin's jaw clenched. Whoever he wasn't just another guest. There was power in his presence, power that terrified her. Her father's voice thundered again. Enough of this madness. Do you know what shame you bring upon us by speaking such nonsense in public? But Aisha turned to him, tears streaming now. It's not nonsense, Baba. I've been living in fear. I didn't want this marriage, but I couldn't say no. You made me believe I had no choice. And her trembling finger pointed toward the man in the corner. He made sure of it. The hall erupted in chaos. Guests gasped and murmured louder. Some stood, craning their necks to see the man she accused. He didn't flinch, didn't even move, just sat there with a cruel smirk, as if daring anyone to challenge him. Armin's blood boiled. Who is he? Aisha's voice broke. My father's business partner. He threatened me, said if I refused, he would destroy everything, and hurt the people I care about. Armin's fists curled. The realization crashed down on him. This wedding was not a union of love, but a transaction. A deal sealed with her life. He stepped closer to her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. Why didn't you tell me before? Her tears shimmered under the chandeliers. Because I didn't think anyone would believe me. No one ever has. The weight of her words crushed him. How many times had she tried to speak, only to be silenced? How many scars, on her wrist, on her heart, had been ignored? Armin straightened, his voice steady but loud enough for all to hear. This marriage is over. I won't let her be forced into it. The hall broke into pandemonium. Some applauded, others protested. Her father lunged forward, shouting, "You have no right." But Armin didn't falter. He reached for Aisha's hand, this time not as a groom claiming a bride, but as a protector reaching out to someone drowning. You're not alone anymore, he told her firmly. For the first time that day, Aisha's lips curved into the faintest, most fragile smile. It wasn't joy, it was relief. But the man in the corner finally stood, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. His eyes narrowed, dark and menacing, locking onto Armin like a predator. The entire hall fell silent again, waiting. Because everyone knew, the truth was only the beginning. The man in the corner moved forward, his polished shoes clicking sharply against the marble floor. The sound echoed, commanding silence from the chaos. Guests shrank back instinctively, sensing the danger in his presence. Aisha clutched Armin's hand tightly, her knuckles pale. Her voice was barely a whisper. That's him. His name is Khalid. Khalid stood tall, broad-shouldered, his expression a mask of calm menace. He adjusted his suit cuff as though this were a business meeting, not a wedding unraveling. Enough of this drama, he said smoothly, his voice carrying authority. This marriage will continue. Do you understand? Armin stepped in front of Aisha, shielding her. His own fear twisted in his stomach, but anger burned hotter. No, it won't. Khalid's smirk deepened. You think you're brave, boy. Do you know who I am? I've built empires. I can crush you like an insect. Armin's voice rose, strong and clear. And yet you're afraid of a girl who finally spoke the truth. That says more about you than all your so-called power. The crowd buzzed with whispers. Some nodded in agreement, emboldened. Others looked nervously at Khalid, fearing what would happen next. Aisha's father rushed forward, torn between fury and desperation. Khalid, please, this is not the place. Khalid cut him off with a glare. You think I'll let years of planning fall apart because your daughter found her voice today? He advanced another step, his presence suffocating. Aisha trembled behind Armin, but Armin stood firm. If you touch her, you'll regret it, he warned. Khalid chuckled darkly. Regret? Boy, you have no idea what regret means. At that moment, one of the guests, a distant cousin of Aisha's, suddenly spoke up, his voice shaky but determined. We've all seen her fear. We've all heard her words. Are we supposed to stay silent and watch her life be destroyed? Another voice rose. He's right. Enough is enough. Soon, more voices joined in, rising against the suffocating silence Khalid had always used as his weapon. The tide of the room shifted. The predator no longer held absolute control. Khalid's jaw tightened. His eyes flashed with fury as he realized the room was slipping from his grip. He pointed a finger at Armin. You will pay for this. Mark my words. Armin didn't back down. No, you'll answer for what you've done. Suddenly, Armin's friend Fahad, who had been quietly filming parts of the wedding for memories, raised his phone. His camera had captured everything, Aisha's confession, Khalid's threats, the truth in full. Already got it, Fahad announced loudly, holding up his phone. If anything happens to them, or if this video doesn't go public today, everyone here will know exactly why. The crowd murmured louder, now with confidence. The power had shifted. For the first time, Khalid's smirk faltered. His eyes darted to the guests, realizing his carefully crafted image was crumbling before him. Armin turned to Aisha, his voice softening. You're safe now, I promise. Tears streamed freely down her cheeks, but her smile was stronger now. Thank you. I thought no one would ever listen. Her father stood frozen, shame heavy on his face. He looked smaller, diminished, as if realizing the weight of the choices he'd made. Aisha, he whispered, but the words carried no authority anymore. Only regret. The officiant, who had been silent through the storm, finally spoke. This ceremony cannot continue. Not like this. The hall erupted in applause, not for a wedding, but for a freedom long overdue. Khalid, cornered and furious, turned sharply and stormed out of the hall, his threats echoing but powerless against the truth that had finally been revealed. Armin exhaled deeply, turning back to Aisha. We don't have to go through with this wedding today. Or ever. Not until you're ready, not until it's your choice. Her chest rose and fell as though she had just escaped drowning. She looked at him with gratitude shining in her eyes. You stopped it. You saved me. Armin shook his head. No, you saved yourself. You found your voice. I only made sure people heard it. The guests began to leave, still buzzing about what they had witnessed. But the hall, once heavy with suffocating expectation, now felt lighter. The chandeliers sparkled as if celebrating the truth. As the last petals of the fallen bouquet were swept aside, Aisha bent to pick one up, a single rose, bruised but still intact. She turned it in her fingers thoughtfully. This was supposed to be the beginning of my cage, she murmured. Instead, it became the key to my freedom. Armin smiled softly. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is say no. She nodded, slipping the rose into her hand like a promise. For the first time in months, maybe years, her shoulders lifted, no longer bowed under invisible chains. Together, they walked out of the hall, not as bride and groom, but as allies, as two souls who had chosen truth over pretense. And though their future was uncertain, one thing was clear, Aisha would never again be silenced. The wedding had ended, but her life had just begun.